Hello and welcome to our podcast named Detours. This podcast embraces the unexpected twists and turns that shapes the journeys of our lives that God sends us down. I'm your host and fellow traveler, Mike. I'm here with my beautiful wife, Deb, and we invite you to join us on this exploration of uncharted territories we encounter along the way. So without further ado, let's dive into this episode. Hello, Detours family. Welcome to the last episode of season number 4. Crazy, right?
It is crazy. Hi, guys.
I am here, as you know, with my beautiful wife, Deb, and we are on a topic of open and closed doors. You know, God opens doors and he closes doors. We've talked about our trip to Poland, how that worked. We've talked about all sorts of things this season, and we thought we'd end with this one today. We're going to kind of use your one of your books as a jumping off point, but just recapping kind of the main takeaways from this season, if you will, kind of looking at several things from a 30,000 foot view. But yeah, it's amazing when God opens and when he closes doors. There is nothing you can do about it, no matter how hard you kick and scream like that kid in the front of a can, you know, at the registers of a grocery store that wants that candy. You can kick and scream all you want, and mom's not going to get it for you.
Not until it's time. And I think when you see God move, in all of the stories we'll tell this afternoon, is once God's ready for him to move you, it is rapid. It is 1, 2, 3, let's go. And
very obvious.
Yes, very obvious that God is moving. And it typically is on the heels of surrender or something that you've laid down before him and said, okay, God, it's yours. Again, let's surrender.
It's on the heels of a bunch of trials, too.
Yes.
A lot of times.
Yes.
It's a lot of, do you trust me in the waiting?
Oh, the waiting is always the hardest part.
Isn't it?
It is, because you really are tried to see if you have enough faith, if God is good. You know, and that's what the waiting is all about.
Yeah. Do you trust that I'm good? Do you trust that I know perfect timing? Mm-hmm. Do you trust me to control and take care of something that is so precious and meaningful to you? You know, there's all sorts of things that God may be saying to you that he's waiting for you to go, yes, Lord, I trust you, before he opens the floodgates. So it's always on the heels
of trial and surrender.
Yeah, and just time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think what we kind of talked about prior to starting the recording is you have a book out.
I do.
That, oh my goodness, it's probably 6 years ago that this book came out.
I think so. No, 2019. Yeah.
2019. Yeah, 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting story how you got the opportunity, how it was introduced to you.
The whole story is interesting, honestly.
Yeah. So let's go through this. Yeah. What was the first blip on the radar for you getting into this book?
Well, there was no blip that I knew of, because I didn't even know there was an opportunity for a book. But the book is set up similar to a Chicken Soup for the Soul, where you have all these different authors telling their story of resilience and overcoming. And they do these books every couple of years, every several years, they do a series of books, this publisher. And I had never met these women before. The publisher is called Elite Publishing, and they take the proceeds of these books to help support women coming out of human trafficking. And it's a beautiful foundation, honestly. So these two women, I happened to meet them, and I wasn't expecting to meet them. Like, my life prior to them was, I was on the heels of a trial. I was healing from sexual abuse. I was attempting a career change. I was attempting to move from Fort Lauderdale to wherever God was going to place me. So my life was pretty chaotic, but I was still finding joy in all of that, because I knew God was healing me and I knew God was growing me. And I had taken several programs that were meant for personal growth and leadership. And I had a dear friend that I did all of these workshops with. And she was kind of like one of these women that was just like a go-getter. Everything that she did turned to gold. And it's not because of her, it was because of her relationship with the Lord. And she was tenacious, and she had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I just adored her. And so we had done a few things together in regards to leadership conferences. So she's become now a trusted friend. And one day she's just like, hey, you're coming over to my house. We're doing like a round table with all these different women in ministry. And I was just like, well, I'm really tired. I have a lot going on this week. I think I'm just going to skip. Yeah, I'm just going to skip it. And like a good friend, she nudged and she was like, no, you're coming. And I was like, really? I protested like twice, and she insisted. So I was forced, honestly, to come to this thing.
Sure.
And so I reluctantly went, but I knew eventually I was going to have a good time because it's a group of women talking about Jesus. How bad could it be?
Was this like a networking thing at her house where everyone would just happen to be Christian? What's the setting?
Everyone was Christian, and I don't know that it was meant to be a networking thing. I just knew that people were getting together to discuss ministry and community on how we can get together and serve the body of Christ.
Okay.
So these people from all over, different churches, different cities, are all coming over to have coffee, cake, and talk. A girl's dream, right? So I get there, and there is probably about 35 women, and we're all just chit-chatting. And as we're going around in kind of like a communal way, expressing like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I serve in this ministry, these two women sat next to each other, and they discussed their publishing company, and that they were always looking for authors who could share stories of resilience and give God glory. Although they are Christian, if the story is good and it doesn't have a Christian bent, they're open to it, blah, blah, blah. And then by the time the thing is over and everyone's kind of gone around and chit-chatted, I happen to think to myself, man, like, I got a story to tell, all right. And I felt the Lord nudging me, go talk to them. I was like, okay,
At this point, how much writing were you doing? Was it 100% personal?
It was all personal. I had not written anything for public eye ever at that point. I was just writing in my journal for the sake of healing. I was maybe dabbled a little bit in like, I tried to write a poem, but none of it was for anyone else to see but me.
And God's nudge, is he telling you he wants you to submit your story? Is he just saying, hey, go have a conversation? What is the nudge?
The nudge felt like you have a story to tell. And, and at that time, I had already written quite a few things about my sexual abuse and the journey God was taking me on towards forgiveness. And so...
But when you say written, you said you never wrote anything. This is all journaling. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So I had all that stuff. So, to me, I already had a story. I just didn't know if anyone would ever want to hear it. And when God said, go talk to them, I was like, okay. So I chatted with this woman briefly. I said, hey, I think I might have a story worthy to be heard. I don't know if it's any good. I'm not a professional writer or anything. And she's like, oh, no, you don't need to be a professional writer. We have editors and we have people that are going to help you through the process. Why don't you come and have lunch with me? I said, okay. And maybe 2 or 3 days later, we meet for lunch. We have a nice conversation. And basically she tells me the way that it is set up is it's self-published. So you provide a donation to the organization so that they can then move forward and help people with human trafficking and pulling them out and re-educating and providing resources. But that was way more money than I had. I did not have that kind of money. I was like, I don't know how that's going to happen. And so I listened intently, and I thought it was a great organization. And in my mind, I'm thinking of all the people I know that have the resources to do this and whether they had a story, because I had shut down when she said how much it cost. And then when the
finances, you're definitely you're the saver and I'm the spender.
Yes,
So
I am the saver for sure. And I did not have those resources.
God knew that, huh?
Mm-hmm. So at the end of the lunch, I said, this all sounds really great. I'm sure it's a fantastic opportunity, but I don't have that kind of money. I can tell you this, though. If God wants that story to be told, I will be in your book. And she just looked at me. And she didn't say anything for a few moments. And she started to nod her head. And she said, well, it's funny you say that. We offer 2 scholarships for every book. That means if you can't afford it and we like your story, we fund the whole thing.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. And I got like a little, jiggle in my step. And I was like, okay. She said, why don't you give me your story and I'll present it to the board and we'll decide from there.
So over lunch, you just told her about the story?
Yes.
And so at that point, she's asking for your journal entries, or that's what she's asking you to basically give her a Google Doc or something that has those journal entries in it so she can present that to the board?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
And by the time I had given it to her, I had already rewritten it. Like I kind of wrote it like I was telling a story, not just it was a journal. This day, this happened to me. On this day, I decided I was going to forgive. It's like creative nonfiction. You're telling your story to yourself in a creative way. So I described the moment in time when it happened. I described the emotions that were felt. And I described the process of asking God to help me to forgive. So it was kind of already in story form. And I presented it, and within under a week, I get the call back. We really like your story, and we want to put you in the book.
So talk to me about the season of life that you're in when you get invited over to this group of women, chatting in a house. Yeah. You're almost done with a season of healing. You're still in the throes of a season of healing, because you had years of that in your life, different programs, whether you're going through Trees of Hope, life skills, all those different things.
All of those different programs that I had took, this was at the tail end of that. So I had done a lot of work on myself.
Had you finished the second round of Trees of Hope, or was that still? Because you went through that program twice.
Yeah, I had finished that second round.
Yeah, you had finished. I remember that. Yeah, you had finished.
So I was already, in the process of really getting to, not the end of the journey. I think healing is an ongoing journey, but
the deep dive.
Yeah, I had done the hard work.
Yeah, okay.
And I was also, like I said, when we began, I was also in a season of career change. I was in a season of moving. I didn't know I was moving. I wanted to move. I was exploring.
You wanted to change careers, but none of those doors had been open.
Correct.
Yet, correct?
Correct, okay. Yeah.
So this was just, do you think it was maybe you were sensing a change in the winds? Like you wanted the change, you wanted to move.
I was moving in faith for that change. Like I didn't have any promise that I was going to change careers from God. I do feel like God took me through a journey of looking for different career paths. And when I landed on fire, I felt the nudge to, not the nudge. I just felt like this seems like a good opportunity. I don't know if it's yes or no, Lord, but I'm going to step forward in it. And if you want to stop me, I trust that you will. And so that process of life just changing by faith, like I knew I needed a change in life. I couldn't stay in the career I was in. Right. I couldn't stay in the city I was in. I was moving forward, and God was letting me move forward.
So you were going for a career change. You were attempting, we don't need to dive into all the details. You were attempting to get the exact same position you have now, except at the Hard Rock Casino in Fort Lauderdale, or technically in Hollywood. But had that door been closed at this point? Had God shut that down? You remember?
Not at that time.
It was still a possibility in your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Even that in and of itself is exactly on point with today's episode.
Yes.
We can always swing back to that. So there's lots of, you kind of sense the change in the winds, and you get this opportunity. Do they tell you right then and there that you're one of the two, or just they like your story?
No, they called me back like in less than a week and said, we've presented your document to the board. We really like to offer you the scholarship.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that scary? Because it all of a sudden your story going out, lots of people are going to read about sexual abuse in your life. That could be intimidating.
I wasn't scared for whatever reason. No, I was excited. And I wanted to make sure that, somebody helped, because I handed her a very rough, raw story. Like, I think about that first draft, and it was just like, wow, I'm really glad somebody looked at that and said, that's great, but give me your takeaways. Give me what you really want the reader to read. Because what I hear right now is just the story. I don't have any sense of what you've learned from this story. So someone sat down with me and helped me fine-tune something that was very raw.
Well, it was never intended for public to read. This is just
So that was
Deb's thoughts.
That was a blessing for sure. And by the time that came out, by the time the last edit was due, I had already paid for another leadership conference. And in that leadership conference, I actually fine-tuned that story because I really wanted it to be presented in a way that there was accountability for holding on to anger and resentment for, not even resentment, just totally stuffing it down for 30 years. And so it was kind of as if it was birthed out of taking that final leadership class where I was like, wow, like when I read through this, I don't take any ownership of the fact that I stuffed this down. And I want people to learn that stuffing stuff down doesn't make it better. And so that helped me, and God's timing in lining up that leadership course in the midst of this writing process was deliverance, really.
So you get the call that they're going to publish this in their book.
Yep.
How long does it take?
Oh, I think it was it wasn't very long. I think it was like a 6-month process from beginning to end.
Submitting to, I guess, the premiere of the book, if you will.
Yeah. Submitting all your, your versions until you get to your final version, the version that's going to be in the book.
Okay.
And they give you classes along the way, and, you take it to somebody and you have them read through it, and they give you suggestions, and not changing your story, but allowing you to better tell the story.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So everything happens and you get published in the book. It still seems so odd to me that why do you get nervous? You do the Trees of Hope podcast. Why do you get nervous when you go on that podcast and talk about your story, but yet publishing your story in a book is so vulnerable and so raw? You're like, nah, no big deal.
I think because in my mind, I believe less people read. Honestly,
the audience for the book is smaller, even though it's an international best-selling book.
Yeah, I just think every time I write something, I go, do people still read? Like, I wonder to myself, because people watch a lot of videos, people listen to a lot of podcasts, but people don't always read. So
interesting.
I felt like there was some, I don't know, like there was going to be less people. And, there were a bunch of other people sharing vulnerable stories all in the same book. So I don't know.
Okay. You could blend into the crowd.
Right. I wasn't the sole author. It was me and 20 other people. So.
Okay. All right. So the season that you were coming out of, this was probably Was this like the first, all of a sudden you enter a season of blessing? Do you think that the book being published with you in it was like the first
Oh, absolutely.
thing to drop?
Wouldn't you think that would be like, that's such a great blessing? Like,
Oh yeah, but I don't know if it's the first.
yes.
I don't, we were not together at the time, so I don't know what was going on in your life. So you went through how many years of trials? Like, was the start of everything your divorce?
Actually,
of like the really tough season?
no, actually, the start of it was getting saved. As blessed as it was, trials came shortly after because I was in a marriage with somebody who didn't love the Lord and life was changing rapidly. So that kind of getting saved within the first 6 months, I started to see the trials come.
It's funny because this same thing happened to me. I got saved and immediately the trials kicked in. You know, you would like to think you get saved and life starts to improve, but mine got real tough and stayed tough for quite some time.
As did mine.
There was a lot of, I guess, refining that God was doing in my life after, the minute I got saved.
That's why your foundation of being saved and really understanding biblical truth is so important, because that's when people walk away. It's like, I didn't sign up for all these trials, but yet you would have all those trials regardless, because that's the human experience. But without having the firm footing in the word and understanding that Jesus didn't promise you a blessed life. If you get a blessed life, that's beautiful, but he promised that you're going to have trials, and he has overcome the world. And until you understand that, I mean, if you're sitting in a church where everything is like, well, if you just do X, Y, and Z, you'll be blessed. That's not how life works.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of churches out there. And there's definitely prosperity gospel, but there's also just a misinformed version of it.
Yes.
God, you have a set of rules outlined in the Bible, and so long as I stay within that walled garden, I'll be safe.
Yeah, and life will be just great, and I'll get everything I want, and I really won't have to deal with suffering because I'm yours. And that's the complete opposite of what happens. The suffering is what refines us. The suffering is what teaches us to trust. The suffering is that invitation of intimacy, because you're never more close than when you're crying out to God, please help me. I mean, when everything's good and you're on a mountaintop, sometimes you forget how good the Lord is. And I know that sounds silly, but that happens a lot.
It does. I don't even know where this thought process originated, who said it or whatnot, but I definitely remember someone talking about, look at like King David, just the number of trials that he had. Look at your own life. If you live a good life, you just aren't as close to God as you could be. It's just human nature. If you don't have those trials change you. They change your relationship with Jesus, because you realize you don't have control. Like, I look at all the aspects of my life. The most important parts of my life: our marriage, our parents, health. I just go down the list. My job. I could get laid off tomorrow.
I know.
You and I could start having marital problems. All of those things. The more important it is, the more you realize you don't have control.
Very true.
The only thing you can control is how you react to whatever God puts in front of you.
Right.
Everything that we've got going on with Mom, we can't control that. But we can control how we react when something happens, a fall happens, or
a doctor doesn't call back, or, a surgery gets rescheduled, or,
whatever it may be. So it's interesting. And you had no control over whether or not you were going to get published with
Elite Foundation,
with the scholarship is what I was trying to think of. But it sounds like pretty early on you release control of this.
Yes,
and that's so interesting, because that's a bit of a stark contrast. We mentioned it earlier, circling around to your job. You've kind of talked a little bit about it, but you were in a season of you wanted a career change from fitness. You thought fire was the place to be.
Right.
God shuts down what you expected
Right.
to be your career path.
Not career path. I expected this one particular job because I was already working for the organization. So
And you were promised.
Yes, I was
a bit
promised.
a bit of the position, right? You
Yes.
were promised that.
And the door closed. And this
God
is all
shuts the
during
door.
the same season. And that was very difficult because here I am in a season of, new beginnings, or at least I'm attempting new beginnings. I work really, really hard to get my, all my certifications, taking, state exams and doing everything that I need to do, investing time, money, resources. And the job that I think I'm going to get, I've worked for this organization for 7 years. So, I actually thought I was a shoo-in because that's what they led me to believe.
Yeah, and it was an entry level position. It wasn't even management or anything.
No. And that door closed, and that was devastating to me.
God closed that one for sure.
And when I look back on the timeline, shortly after I gave that up, meaning okay, this is not where I'm supposed to be, Lord. I don't understand why. I don't understand any of this. And I was really crunchy about it for a bit, and hit I want to lay in bed and do nothing but cry because I did all of this work and now the job's not mine. But as soon as I truly in my heart let go of that job, not what I said out loud to other people, but what I actually let go of it, it was like a domino effect into the next season of my life. That surrender opened the door for so much more than I could ever imagine possible.
So what was the difference between the two? The book, right out of the gate, you were surrendered. God, if you want this, you'll make it happen. But the career was the opposite.
I wasn't expecting to be in a book. I wasn't preparing and investing to be in a book.
It was expectations. That was the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was you had expectations set on something, and then when God closes the door,
It's devastating.
got it. Okay.
Because even in the process of doing the career change, it was like, okay, God, is this the right step? And I felt like every move that I made was God saying, yeah, go forward, daughter. Yes, go forward, daughter. And so when the answer was no, it was like, I'm confused. Did I hear you wrong? Am I discerning the wrong thing and I just did all of this for nothing? I'm sure people have those questions all the time.
Of course. So I'm going to steal your word. How long were you crusty with God for the career change? How long did you have kind of the bad attitude towards God and the whole situation?
It was 2 solid weeks of really deep I was depressed. I was mad. I had a brief moment, and I know this sounds like over the top, but when you're at your lowest, Satan comes chiming in your ear, and I really just wanted to just give up. And I mean give up. I had a brief moment of suicidal ideation that was just it came out of nowhere, and I wasn't expecting that because I didn't feel like it was that big of a deal to feel this way, but those feelings were very real. And the enemy chimed in my ear, what are you doing? You did all of this and God's supposed to be good, and look at you, you're in bed crying. Yeah, the evil of hell just assaulted me.
Well, he's good at what he does.
Yeah. Yeah. And for 2 weeks, I was inconsolable. I didn't want to talk to anyone. Being a very, very social person, if you don't see me for 2 weeks, I'm in a pit. I'll tell you that. I didn't want another human being to even look at me because I just was so devastated. And I didn't expect that I would feel this way. Like all of it was kind of a shock to me, honestly.
So being your husband, I know you pretty well. You are so results driven. Do you feel like when you say disappointment earlier, how much of it were you disappointed in God? How much of it were you disappointed in yourself? How much of it were you disappointed in the people that had told you were going to get the position and didn't? Like, break that down for me. If you have 100% blame that you could put on different people around this situation, how much went to God? How much went to yourself and the lack of results? How much went to the position? Like, break it down for me.
Break it down was I was highly disappointed in the people who made promises that didn't keep them. So I would say 70% of that was like, really like, are you serious? You encouraged me to take these classes. You gave me the opening and then you made me look like a fool. So I was really pissed at that.
Interesting. Okay.
I was disappointed, I guess, in the other, maybe 70 was, you know, you're making me do percentages, maybe 60. And then the other 40%, like 20 and 20. Like, God, like, am I hearing you wrong? Am I hearing you wrong? And I'm just not this Christian that I think I am, where I can't discern your guidance. I was highly disappointed in myself. And then I was disappointed
that's such a good question, though, that we all wrestle with, right? When you and I were apart, you better believe I asked the question, God, are you sure Deb and I are supposed to be back together? Or was that just something that I fabricated myself because I really, really like her? You know, God, did you really say that?
Right.
You know, did I follow your ways?
Right. And that disappointment in myself of like, maybe I don't have this Christian thing down as best as I could, because I thought you said move forward and now it's a stop. And so that was disappointment in myself. I wasn't disappointed in my performance because I had passed every class with an A. I had completed my state exam on the first try. I wasn't disappointed in my performance. I knew I worked hard, and I didn't think that I did anything in regards to performance and results that I could control. And then the other part was just like, God, like, why? Why are you doing this to me? I think we say that a lot to God. Why are you doing this to me? Which is not a fair thing to say to God, but
why are you allowing this? Why are you doing this to me? Yeah.
I know it's
we don't have the whole picture. We want our way. There's so many
we're childlike
reasons for that we fall short, you know?
Yeah. So that was kind of the gig. I was just totally devastated.
And what snaps you out of it? So you said you were in that little funk for a couple of weeks. What snaps you out of it?
I had a therapy session where just having someone talk me through it and walk through the pain of it and the disappointment of it and giving me permission to, it's okay if you had a little mental breakdown here. It's okay that you were in bed for 2 weeks. Like, give yourself some grace. I needed somebody to tell me I wasn't overreacting. I needed somebody to tell me that everybody gets disappointed and devastated sometimes. And it's not what you can shame yourself because you did that, or you can pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go, okay, what's next? And that's the nudge she gave me. She was like, just pick yourself up, give yourself some grace, and ask God, what's next, Lord?
Yeah, so many people can get stuck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's easy to get stuck.
You get stuck because it's easy to get stuck. It's hard to pick yourself up when
especially when you're that low.
Yeah, when life throws a haymaker at you and it hits you square on the chin and knocks you down on the canvas, it's much easier to sit there and count stars laying down on the canvas than it is to fight to get back up, because you're going to get hit again if you get back up.
Depression's real. It's physiological. It's emotional. It's a spiritual thing. I was definitely being spiritually attacked. During those 2 weeks, I had some of the most brutal nightmares I have ever experienced. I had nightmares where I was being set on fire, like just evil stuff. I I was being attacked
That's
spiritually. Yeah.
Crazy. All right, so you have a therapy session.
Right. I have someone validate my emotions and tell me, it's okay, sweetheart. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and ask God what's next.
Okay, so...
And so I did. I literally, that was the physical surrender of the job, the career. And I said to the Lord, I don't know if I got what you said to me correct or not. I walked through all the classes. I did everything you told me, or not you told me to do, but I did everything I thought I heard you say, move forward in. If this was just an exercise for me to understand that I could do something hard, that I can do something different in a career after 25 years, if that's what it was, just to show me that I could do hard things, then I thank you. I thank you. And it's yours. I can't hold on to this because I don't understand it and I don't want it anymore. If you want me in this, I trust that you'll do something different than I understand. And if you don't want me in this, I trust you'll show me what's next. And that was the prayer. And Mike, it was not more than 20, maybe it was 36 hours. 36 hours later, I get a call from a girl I went to fire school with, Megan. And she said, you want a job at NASA as a fire inspector?
How crazy is that?
Oh my goodness. It was on fire. I was like, what is happening, Lord?
That is crazy.
Yes, it really was.
In the interview process, it was like, again, it was rapid fire. You were in this, and that is so many times. That's the point of today's episode. One of the big takeaways anyway is when you're in seasons of trial and God is continually shutting doors. We're going through a trial now with Mom's health.
Yes.
You know, and it's there's probably a lot more trial to go. This is probably going to be a longer trial. When God shuts doors, man, there's nothing you can do except surrender and work on your attitude and go, what am I supposed to learn in this?
Right.
And those seasons for both of us lasted about 7 years before we met one another. Seasons of just God working on us, working on our relationship with him, putting us through trials. But yeah, towards the end of those 7 years, all of a sudden this opportunity for a book comes along, all of a sudden an opportunity to go work at NASA of all places. Mm-hmm. You had no experience. That's what's so amazing is you didn't even have experience in the fire industry.
I didn't.
And the first company that legitimately wants to hire you is NASA.
Yeah. And the guy that hires me is a Christian. And he says basically, listen, I can teach you everything you need to know. You have the certifications. You don't have the experience. How are you going to get the experience if no one gives you the opportunity? I am looking for a team that works well together. Everything else I can teach you. And that was music to my ears.
Sure.
It was just everything I needed to know was like, I'm going to be okay under this man's leadership. And he did. He was patient, even to this day. If I have a question where I'm like, man, I probably should know that by now, but I'm not sure about it, I don't ever feel embarrassed to ask for help because I have a Christian leader who is very humble, very meek, and has invited me to ask questions and grow and learn. It's been the best work environment I've had.
And it's again, going back to kind of the main point or the main takeaway of the episode is, you'll have these seasons of just trials where it seems like every direction you turn is a closed door. And God's just kind of sitting there as the teacher trying to teach you something. Are you open to a hard lesson?
Right.
How
are you going to act when the door closes?
Yeah,
What's
when
your
you don't
attitude?
get what you want,
Right.
when you want it, what is your attitude? Are you surrendering to me? Are you worshiping me? Or are you on a bed for 2 weeks?
Crunchy.
How many quarts of Ben and Jerry's did you consume during those 2 weeks?
None, but lots of chocolate.
Lots of Hershey bars gave up their lives during those 2 weeks.
For real.
But It's so true. You know, when I was waiting for you, I had no idea how many months I was going to wait. God didn't give me that answer. He just said, wait. And you know, that particular trial in my life, you know, it went on for over a year and a half. You were away. But all of a sudden, you get this job at NASA. You accept the job at NASA. You come say goodbye to me.
Yeah.
We covered that story in season 1, how all that went.
And that went rapidly too.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You had done everything correct. And to be honest, had we gotten back together before you got the job at NASA, we probably wouldn't live up here.
Right.
It took God a specific order for things to fall in place for us to land where we are, and we're very happy now where we're at. And yeah, I don't know that we would have moved on the heels of a brand new relationship or
right.
attempt number 2 at a brand new relationship. I still am working for Calvary Chapel. How would that work remotely? You know, I think I would have had a harder time with it. But it's fascinating how we were both just going through seasons of trials. The questions, God, why this? I don't understand. This isn't making sense.
Yes.
But it's you're truly playing a game of chess against someone who's insanely better at chess than you are. And their moves are confounding, but it's because they're going to win the game. You don't understand what they're doing. And that's what it is with God. He always is going to be 1 step, 2 step, 3 steps ahead of us.
Sure. I mean, we live in linear time. We live in a timeline. He does not. And
Yeah.
so he sees the beginning from the end. And everything in between seems like, but I don't understand. It should go in this order, Lord. And he's just smiling, going, just wait for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something really amazing. And you're going to be baffled at the end of just how great the story turns out.
And that reminds me too, just a few weeks ago, you know, we attend Calvary Surfside. Calvary Surfside has been bursting at the seams from a congregation size standpoint for years.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are at the point now where we have 2 overflows.
Yep.
We have our fellowship hall that turned into an overflow where it probably seats, if I had to guess, any given Sunday, 50 people. And then they have another overflow. And I mean, my goodness, for years, we have been waiting, going, we need a new property, Lord. And Satellite Beach is not a very big island.
No, it isn't.
But it's beachfront property. So it's insanely expensive, far more expensive to buy several acres over in Satellite Beach than our church can afford. And for years, we have been just going, what are we going to do? God closed every door on everything that we were attempting to do. And I can tell you the board has been faithful.
Mm-hmm.
Even though every door was shut, the board has been faithful. Our deacons and elders have been faithful. We've been faithful with our finances, and our pastor and assistant.
Faithful in the word.
Yeah, and our pastor and our assistant pastor, every single employee and leader at that church has been faithful, and even through the frustration, they've been faithful. And you know, just a few weeks ago, we got the news that, hey, God opened the door, and not only did He open the door, but just a torrential downpour of blessing on our church. We won't go into all the details because I don't know what we can say and what we can't, but just the torrential downpour of, hey, we found a new location and we're going after it. And it certainly appears like it's all falling into place, but it is blessing beyond blessing. But the years, people probably coming to Calvary, and, you know, typically in the church world, once you get to about 20% of extra space, like you're filled your sanctuary 80%,
right?
When people visit, it's too much for them. There's not enough open seats, and people don't come back. And we've been way beyond that since COVID.
That's true. We were open during COVID.
Yeah, I think Surfside closed 1 week during COVID, and then it just opened right back up. And that's part of the growth that we are experiencing, plus just the growth in the area. with everything that's happening with
The
SpaceX
Space Center.
and just the areas exploding. And being a Calvary Chapel people, there's a certain level of trust with that name, so people are always curious. And I can't even imagine the number of people that would have liked to be at Surfside, but it was just too full. And all of a sudden, just the massive blessing, one thing right after another. This blessing could have only happened if numerous things fell into place.
And every one of them did.
Over a matter of a couple of weeks. It's not just that God opens the door to blessing, but it's so rapid fire. When you are in a season of blessing,
true.
know you are in a season of blessing, because there's no other explanation than God is saying to you, hey, you did good. You were patient with me. There were some rough patches along the way.
Right.
But you learned. Mm-hmm. You trust me more.
Yeah.
And you know what? Here's something. So many times God's not saying no, he's saying not yet.
Right.
Right. Our relationship, the first time we were in a relationship, it wasn't no. It was God saying, hey, not yet. Deb has healing she has to do. Mike, you have some spiritual maturing that has to happen, but put the work in and trust me, and you're going to get something better than you ever understood. Mm-hmm. And just so many times when things seem like doors are closed, sometimes they are, for sure.
Yes. And
sometimes it's just, hey, I'm shutting the door for now, but that's because I kind of need you to wander around over here, work with me, and only in a situation where I can get the glory will I open that door. And,
hallelujah.
So if you're in a season of trials and tribulations, hang on.
Yep.
Hang on, honor God, and he will honor you.
Yeah, I always say be a good steward of your suffering, because in the suffering there is something to learn, and there is something that will eventually help other people. I mean, my story of abuse has helped multiple people. I don't even know how many people, because God's going to show me in heaven one day, but people are learning from that suffering, and they're being comforted by that. And sometimes you think that I don't want that. I don't want to have to be suffering so that I can help other people. But in that suffering, you get an opportunity to really glorify God, because there's nothing more glorious than seeing somebody else learn something from what you've already learned about in your walk with Jesus, that you can share that and you can watch them grow.
Yeah, and that's part of the point of this podcast for us, is to help other people. Maybe, the goal is to shorten your learning curve.
Yeah.
If you're going through something, season 4, hopefully part of the learning curve for you guys that we were able to shorten was exactly what we've been talking about today. Trust God. Give up, the catalyst for us getting back together was me going to God, giving our relationship up to him, where I go, God, I don't get this. I don't understand.
Surrender.
It's fully in your control. She's moving away. I don't get it, but I love you and I know that you're good. Mm-hmm. And I truly think it was that prayer. It was in the parking lot of the church where I made that prayer. And I really think that's when God was like, yep, Snyder, you finally pieced this all together. It took you, a year and a half to get where I needed you to be.
Right.
Deb had a whole different path that took her 18 months, 19 months, but took you this long to get you to this point. But now that you're here, I can begin to bless you, because I can trust you with her. I can trust, and a lot of that, part of that process is growing you into, especially when it's the not yet, not the no's, but the not yet, is he's got to turn you into someone that when the answer is yes, he can trust you with it.
Yeah. For sure.
So yeah, nobody loves these seasons, but they are so necessary. And I've never learned more. I've never grown as a Christian more than in the suffering. Learning to be patient with mom, because dementia just changes a person. She's not repeating things to be annoying. She's repeating things because she doesn't remember she said it a few minutes ago.
Yeah, genuinely.
And having that patience to have the exact same conversation every 15 minutes.
That's generous. Every five minutes.
Yeah, it depends.
Very generous of you, sweetheart. And it's hard.
But, on the other side, that God is working on patience for you and I. Hey, even when it's annoying, can you have a servant heart?
Right.
Even when it's annoying, can you love? Because that's what we're called to. We're called to love and we're called to serve. That's it. And I don't remember who said it, but the prayer that you pray is, Lord, I don't pray that you change my circumstances. I pray that you give me a stronger back to carry more of a burden.
That was Bill.
Yeah, but Bill got that from someone else. I don't remember who said that originally, but that truly is the prayer that you need to learn to pray during these seasons is, God, don't take the pressure away. Turn me into a person that can handle more pressure, because the more going to the gym, you're trying to bench press. The first time you go, you can bench press 200 pounds, but you slowly start adding weight. You keep going back. You slowly keep adding weight. And all of a sudden you're bench pressing 300 pounds, whatever it may be. But it's the same thing in our lives. God has got us and he's going, hey, you can only bench 200 pounds. I'm going to add some weight. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to force you to lift this repeatedly so that you can get stronger.
Right.
And so again, nobody likes the burn. Nobody likes it.
No, it's painful.
But
it's painful.
Yeah.
And we don't say this just with a very flippant, like, hey, just suck it up. I mean, we've walked through trials that have been so dark and so deep that we are saying it was worth it. Believe it or not, even the deepest valley you're in, it's worth it if God is there. And you become more in love with him every time you see him deliver you from the trial. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a process. It is a refining process. Once you come through the other side and you're looking back, you definitely go, oh, wow, that's what a refining process looks like. Mm-hmm. I see what the Bible's talking about. And yes, some of the worst things you can say is, well, just get over it, or God, give him control and this, that, and the other. And yes, that's true.
Right.
But it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to execute it.
Right. And to live it and to have, examples of it in your own life. Because when a trial hits again, we so easily forget.
Oh, yeah.
We need to be reminded, remember how God showed up in this trial 2 years ago. Remember how God showed up when you didn't think there was any way out, and yet he showed up. And so they become benchmarks in your walk of faith to look back, just like the Israelites were always asked to put up memorials or, put stones in the Jordan River. Hey, you've crossed over. And every time you look at this stone, you'll know of the day that you had the faith to walk through the waters because you believed in me, because you trusted me. And God puts these memorial stones in your suffering that allows you to look back and go, okay, you were good to me then. You're still going to be good to me now. Whether I get it or not, you're the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I need this memorial stone. Some of my deepest moments in worship actually bring me back to times where I had cried out to him. And yet I'm in this happy moment of joyful celebration, arms up, singing, whatever. And this vision of me weeping in a corner comes into my mind, but I don't look at it as oh, that was sad. I look at it as, wow, God, you were there. You delivered me. I remember that. And that reminds me the next time I feel like I want to cry in a corner that you're going to be there too.
Yeah, it's amazing. Even trusting God, you can go from one trial to another because you learn to trust God in one aspect of your life, but not the other. Mm-hmm. It could be you learn to trust God with your finances, but you don't trust God with your kids.
Right.
So God goes, great, we can check off one box. Now let's move on to the next.
Yeah.
It can be absolutely amazing, but he's always conforming us into an image of his son. That's what we can bank on in all of this. So it really is amazing.
It is. I'm grateful.
Yeah, me too. We can honestly sit on the other side of some pretty big trials and go, yeah. God is good. We don't even get the whole picture, and we can sit and say, hey, he's good. I know enough. I've seen enough of what God did in me to know that even though I don't even see the whole picture, I trust that he's good. So, yeah, guys, season 4, all about God closing doors, opening doors. Hang on. If you're in the season of a trial, hang on, man.
Yep. You will see fruit from it. I promise.
Yeah. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he is trying to conform you. So hang on. It's not always easy. It's not always what you think it's going to be. As a matter of fact, most of the time, it's neither one of those things.
Completely different than what you think it's going to be. And it's longer than you want it to be.
Yeah. But it's one of those things, I often think about sitting and having a conversation. If we had the 12 apostles over for dinner, I would sit there and go, hey, guys, was it easy? And they would all just laugh and, roll their eyes and this, that, and the other and have a smirk on their face. And then I'd follow up with the question, was it worth it? And I'd love to see what their reaction would be with the second question. The first question is the playful question, but the second question, and I have a funny feeling,
well,
at the end of my life, at the end of my life, I want to look back and go, was it easy? No, it wasn't. All the trials and everything that I went through, but at the end of the day, was it worth it? Absolutely.
Amen.
So hang on, guys, if you're in that. Hopefully this was just, a word of encouragement this whole season. But yeah, it will be amazing if you do hold on and you keep your faith and your hope in Jesus.
Yeah, amen to that, guys.
So, well, thank you guys so much. Season 4 has been a blessing. We are going to go on to season number 5. But for now, we thank you guys so much. We will talk to you in a few weeks.
Yep. Take care.
Bye, guys.